I did not scream, I did not cry. I just smiled while my heart cracked in silence. When I asked my daughter-in-law when the wedding was, she looked at me like I was nothing and said, "We got married yesterday." No invitation, no warning, no respect. Just a quiet announcement meant to remind me that I no longer mattered. In that moment, I realized something terrifying and powerful at the same time. They did not forget me. They excluded me on purpose. And while they thought they had one, what they did not know was this. That single sentence was the beginning of everything they would soon regret. My name is Eleanor Brooks, and I am 54 years old. I have spent most of my life believing that love, respect, and loyalty were things you earned through consistency and sacrifice. I was wrong. Sometimes they are taken from you quietly by the people you protected the most, and you only realize it when the silence becomes too loud to ignore. I raised my son Daniel, alone after his father passed away when Daniel was just 8. We were not rich, but we were close. Every scraped knee, every school project, every late-night fever was something I carried with pride. I built my life around making sure he never felt abandoned, never felt less than worthy. I taught him to say thank you, to look people in the eye, to honor family, or at least I thought I did, 'cause the day he chose secrecy over honesty. I realized how little control a mother truly has once her child becomes a man. Daniel met Ava 2 years ago. She was beautiful in a sharp, calculated way. Perfect hair, perfect posture, perfect smile that never quite reached her eyes. The first time I met her, she hugged me lightly, as if she were touching something fragile and disposable at the same time. It was subtle. Most people would have missed it. I did not. There was a distance in her warmth, a performance in her politeness. Still, I welcomed her. I always did. 'Cause I believed respect was something you modeled first, not demanded. They moved fast. Too fast. Too fast. Within months, Ava had rearranged Daniel's apartment, his routines, even the way he spoke to me. Calls became shorter. Visits became rare. Our conversations shifted from warmth to formality. And I told myself it was normal. People grow. Lives change. But there was something else under the surface. Something colder. Something deliberate. I remember the first time I felt truly invisible. We were at a family dinner, and Ava spoke over me 3 times in one conversation. Daniel did not notice. Or worse, he noticed and chose not to intervene. That was the moment I understood I was no longer a priority. I was an accessory, a background figure in the story of their new life. And yet, I still smiled. I still brought dessert. I still said, "Let me know if you need anything." What I did not realize then was that kindness can be mistaken for weakness when it is given too freely. The house I live in has been in my family for 3 generations. It is warm, modest, filled with memories. Daniel grew up here. Every inch of this place carries pieces of his childhood. That mattered to me. Family mattered to me. Which is why I kept hoping even when hope started to feel foolish. Ava never asked about my life, never asked about my work, my memories, my health. She only asked questions when she needed something. And even then, it was indirect, masked behind Daniel's voice. That was her power. She never had to be the villain openly. Simply guided the narrative. Then came the wedding conversation. Or what I thought was a conversation. We were sitting in their living room, sunlight cutting through the curtains, dust floating in the air like quiet witnesses. I asked casually, gently, "So, when is the wedding?" I was smiling. I was hopeful. I was still a mother who believed she mattered. Ava looked at me with that same controlled smile and said, "We got married yesterday." The room went silent. My heart did not race. It dropped, like something breaking without a sound. No invitation. No announcement. No space for me in one of the most important days of my son's life. They did not forget. They chose to exclude. Daniel did not look at me. That hurt more than her words. I nodded. I smiled. I congratulated them. And inside, something shifted. Something solidified. Because exclusion is not accidental. It is intentional. And intention carries consequences. From that moment on, I started paying attention. Okay? To their tone, their patterns, their assumptions. Ava believed she had control. Daniel believed peace meant compliance. And both of them believed I would stay quiet forever. They were wrong. What they did not know was that I had already started stepping back, observing, understanding the rules of the new game they had created. I was no longer reacting. I was preparing. And preparation, when fueled by clarity, is far more powerful than anger. This was not about revenge. Not yet. This was about reclaiming dignity, about reminding them that silence does not equal surrender, and that underestimation is the most dangerous mistake anyone can make. If you have ever been pushed aside by the people you sacrificed everything for, this story is for you. If you have ever been made to feel invisible, replaceable, or quietly erased from a place you earned, you are not alone. Tap the like button if you believe respect should never be optional. Subscribe if you are ready to hear a story where dignity is reclaimed and justice is delivered in the most powerful way possible. After the wedding revelation, nothing changed on the surface. That was the cruelest part. Life continued as if I had not just been erased from one of the most important moments of my son's life. Ava still smiled when she saw me. Daniel still spoke politely. But there was a new layer beneath every interaction. Something sharp and intentional, like a blade hidden behind silk. They began to treat their marriage like a private club I had failed to qualify for. Conversations stopped when I entered the room. Phone calls ended abruptly. Plans were discussed in half sentences and coded looks. I was no longer excluded accidentally. I was excluded strategically. The first real sting came when I found out about the family dinner. I heard about it from my sister, not from my son. She mentioned casually that Daniel and Ava were hosting a dinner to celebrate their marriage properly. My heart tightened, but I kept my voice calm. I asked her who was invited. She listed names. My name was not one of them. That was not oversight. That was a decision. I called Daniel that night. Not angry, not emotional, just curious. Or at least I pretended to be. I asked him about the dinner. There was a pause. Just a fraction of a second, but it was enough. That hesitation told me everything. Oh, it is just something small, he said. Nothing formal. Small enough to exclude his mother. Formal enough to invite half the family. I hung up with a polite goodbye, my hands trembling. That was when frustration began to harden into resolve. Because when people start rewriting your importance, they believe you will accept the new version without question. Ava became bolder after that. She started making comments that sounded innocent but landed like insults. She would say things like, "You must be enjoying all your free time now," or "It is nice not having obligations," right? She spoke as if I had been retired from my role in their lives. As if I had been dismissed. Daniel said nothing. At family gatherings, she controlled the narrative. Talked about their future plans, their trips, their investments, their decisions. Always we, never us, with me included. I watched my son nod beside her, shrinking slightly each time she spoke. Like a man slowly handing over his authority without realizing he was doing it. The more invisible I became, the more visible their arrogance grew. They stopped asking before making decisions that involved shared spaces. They moved dates around without informing me. They borrowed items from my home through Daniel and returned them late, damaged, or not at all. Each act was small. But together, they formed a pattern of entitlement. I tested something one afternoon. Ava asked if she could use my dining room for a photo shoot for her social media. I hesitated just for a second. Her eyes narrowed. And then she smiled again. "Course, only if it is convenient," she said, already assuming my compliance. Said no. The silence that followed was heavy. Her smile disappeared instantly. For the first time, I saw irritation flash across her face before she covered it. That moment told me everything. My obedience was expected. Okay? My boundaries were inconvenient. Okay? After that, Daniel visited less. Calls became shorter. Okay? The punishment was subtle, but it was there. Distance as discipline.
Okay.
And I began to understand the game they were playing. They wanted control, not loud control. Quiet control. The kind that makes you question your worth while they appear reasonable to everyone else. What they did not realize was that I had stopped trying to be included. I was studying them, watching how they handled power, how they reacted to resistance, how quickly kindness turned into hostility when it was no longer guaranteed. Then came the envelope. It arrived one afternoon in Ava's handwriting, addressed to me with exaggerated elegance. Inside was an invitation to their official wedding celebration party. My name was spelled incorrectly. The date was inconvenient. The tone was cold and formal, like a business memo. It was not reconciliation. It was performance. They wanted me there, not because I mattered, but because my presence would complete the image they wanted others to see. And that was the moment that tension reached a new level. Because now I was not just excluded, I was being used. I held the invitation in my hands, feeling the weight of everything they thought I would tolerate. And I realized something that sent a calm, dangerous clarity through me. They believed I would show up, smile, and play my part. They had no idea what showing up was about to cost them. I stood in my kitchen holding that invitation long after the kettle had gone cold. The paper felt heavier than it should have, as if it carried every quiet insult, every moment of dismissal, every unspoken boundary they had crossed. My name spelled wrong. The date chosen without a single thought for my schedule. The tone polite in the way strangers are polite, not in the way family is. This was not an olive branch. It was a command disguised as courtesy. I imagined myself there, sitting at a table they arranged, smiling when they introduced me, pretending everything was normal while they collected admiration for their perfect image. I saw how it would go. Ava would play the gracious bride. Daniel would play the devoted son. I would play the quiet, forgiving mother who made their story complete. The idea made my chest tighten. I whispered to myself, no, not out loud. Not yet, but in my mind it was firm. It was the first time I had refused them internally, even before refusing them with words. And that was when something changed. For years, I had believed love meant endurance. That being strong meant being silent. That dignity meant staying graceful even when I was hurt. But standing there, I finally understood the cost of that belief. It had taught people how to treat me. It had trained them to assume my compliance. And that realization was not painful. It was liberating. My phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Did you get the invitation? My thumb hovered over the screen. So many responses formed in my mind. Polite ones, safe ones, familiar ones. But none of them felt honest anymore. I typed, deleted, typed again. Yes, I did. 3 words, neutral, controlled, powerful in their simplicity. Seconds passed. Then another message appeared. Good. We really hope you can make it. Hope the word felt hollow. They did not hope. They expected. Hope implies vulnerability. Expectation implies authority. I sat down slowly, feeling my pulse steady instead of race. That was new. I was not reacting. I was choosing. I began replaying everything in my mind. The wedding secrecy, the uninvited dinner, the small humiliations disguised as accidents. The moment Ava's smile dropped when I said no. The way Daniel avoided my eyes when honesty was required. It's all connected like a map I had been refusing to read. They had not taken my power. I had handed it over in pieces, believing I was being loving. And now I wanted it back. I walked to the mirror in the hallway and looked at myself. Not the version they saw. The version I had buried under patience. My eyes were calm, my posture straight. My face carried no anger, only certainty. And certainty is dangerous when underestimated. I realized this was not about punishing them. It was about redefining myself. They believed they controlled the story. I was about to become the author. Another message appeared. Ava is really excited about everyone being together. I almost laughed. Excited was not the word. Prepared was closer. She had curated this moment. She had calculated the optics. My role had already been written. But scripts can be rewritten. I closed my phone and opened a drawer where I kept important documents. House papers, financial records, family heirlooms, things I had trusted Daniel with access to without hesitation. I began reviewing what control actually meant, what influence actually looked like, what leverage truly was. Not revenge, preparation. The realization sent a chill through me, not of fear, but of clarity. They had mistaken my generosity for weakness, they had mistaken my silence for surrender. And in doing so, they had revealed every move they would make when challenged. That was their mistake, because from this moment forward, I was no longer reacting to their actions. I was anticipating them. I was no longer hoping for respect. I was structuring it. I picked up the invitation again and smoothed its edges with my fingers. The paper no longer felt heavy. It felt useful. I whispered, this time out loud. You invited the wrong woman. And in that quiet kitchen, surrounded by a life I had built with my own hands, I made a decision that would change the balance of power between us forever. They believed this invitation was their stage. I knew it was about to become mine. It began quietly. No announcements, no warnings, just movement. Controlled, precise. I called my lawyer first. Not dramatically, not emotionally, just calmly, like a woman checking the weather before stepping outside. I asked questions about property rights, about access, about financial entanglements, about what happens when generosity has been mistaken for obligation. Each answer felt like another brick placed into a foundation I had never realized I needed. Then I called my accountant. My voice was steady. My hands were not. I asked for a full review of every account Daniel had access to, every shared signature, every convenience I had allowed because he was my son. The line between trust and vulnerability suddenly became very clear. I wrote things down. Dates, names, patterns. Ava's behaviors were not emotional. They were strategic, and strategies leave trails. The next step was silence. I stopped calling. I stopped initiating. I became pleasant, but unavailable. Distance, I learned, makes people nervous when they are used to control. 2 days later, Daniel called me. Are you upset? He asked. Oped out, even though he could not see it. No, I am just busy. Busy. A word that unsettles people who expect access. Then I prepared the setting. Her celebration would be held at a venue I had helped secure months ago through an old family connection. They had never asked how it happened. They just accepted the convenience. I called the venue manager and requested a private meeting. When I walked into her office, the air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old wood, familiar, grounded. I explained everything, not dramatically, not accusingly, just truthfully. Her eyes changed, respect replaced formality. She nodded once. We can accommodate your request. That was all I needed. On the day of the event, I arrived early, not to help, to observe. The hall buzzed with soft music and polite laughter. Glasses clinked. The scent of flowers and champagne floated in the air. Ava stood in the center like a queen on a chessboard, perfectly styled, perfectly composed, perfectly unaware. She spotted me and her smile tightened. You came, she said. Yes, I replied. I always finish what I start. The words lingered between us longer than necessary. I took my seat quietly. I watched. I waited. The room filled. Applause rose. Compliments flowed. Ava basked in it. Daniel stood beside her, nervous, hopeful, dependent. Then the host announced a short speech segment for family acknowledgments. That was my opening. I stood slowly. The room softened into silence. Every step I took echoed against the polished floor. My heart did not race. It anchored. I would like to say something, I said gently. Ava's eyes flickered just once, but I saw it. I was surprised by your marriage, I continued. Not because of the love between you, but because of the secrecy. Families are not built on convenience. They are built on respect. The room shifted. Daniel's face paled. Ava stiffened. I realized something important after that day, I said. I had given access without boundaries, support without structure, and love without expectation of accountability. I paused. Silence became heavy. So I made changes. A murmur rippled through the room. I withdrew shared access to my property and finances. I redefined legal permissions. I reclaimed what I had allowed to be assumed. Ava's smile vanished completely. This does not mean I stopped loving my son, I said. It means I remembered how to love myself. Daniel looked at me, eyes wide. Mom, we can talk about this later. This is later, I replied softly. The air felt thick, electric, honest. You wanted a celebration, I said, turning to Ava. Here it is, a beginning built on truth. For a moment, no one spoke. Then polite applause began. Then real applause followed, slow, respectful, grounded. Ava stood frozen. I sat down calmly. My hands were steady. My breath was even. My power was no longer silent. The silence after I sat down was heavier than any argument could have been. It pressed against the walls, against the chandeliers, against the carefully arranged smiles that no longer knew what role to play. I felt it settle in my chest, not as fear, but as relief. The kind that comes when truth finally stops knocking and walks straight through the door. Ava was the first to move. She let out a small laugh, sharp and brittle, as if trying to cut through the tension with charm. It failed. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for agreement, for validation, for control. She found none. The guests were not confused. They were curious. And curiosity is dangerous when you are trying to protect an image. This is not the place for personal matters, she said, her voice slightly too loud, slightly too fast. I looked at her calmly. You made it the place when you made my exclusion part of your story. Daniel stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. The sound sliced through the room. Mom, please, we can handle this privately. I met his eyes. There was no anger in mine, only clarity. You handled things privately when you married without telling me? I am handling things honestly. His shoulders dropped. In that moment, he looked less like a husband and more like a child who realized the rules had changed without his permission. Ava reached for his arm. He did not pull away, but he did not lean into her either. That hesitation spoke louder than any speech I could have given. The venue manager approached quietly, holding a folder. She handed it to Ava with professional calm. Ava opened it, her fingers trembling slightly. I watched the color drain from her face. The documents inside were confirmations, access revocations, legal boundaries, clear, clean, irreversible. She whispered, You cannot do this. I answered softly, I already did. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Ava tried to speak again, but no sound came out. Her composure cracked, just enough for everyone to see the woman behind the perfection. The one who relied on control, the one who underestimated silence, the one who believed politeness meant powerlessness. Daniel finally spoke, his voice low and uncertain. Why did you not tell us first? I smiled gently. You taught me how, quietly. Without invitation, a few people shifted in their seats. Some nodded. Some looked at Ava with new eyes. Then a balance had shifted, and everyone felt it. Ava straightened her back, trying to reclaim authority. This is manipulation. I tilted my head slightly. No, this is structure. You confuse the two because you benefit from chaos. That landed, her lips parted. No response came. For the first time since I had known her, Ava was not the most powerful person in the room. And she knew it. Daniel sank back into his chair slowly, as if the weight of understanding had finally reached him. His voice softened. You feel betrayed. I shook my head. I felt betrayed. Now I feel awake. The applause started again, not hesitant this time. It was steady, measured, real. It did not celebrate conflict. It honored courage. I closed my eyes briefly and let the sound wash over me. My chest felt lighter. My shoulders relaxed. My breath deepened. I was not triumphant in a loud way. I was validated in a quiet one, the kind that settles into your bones and stays there. Ava gathered her things quickly, movements sharp and controlled, but her hands gave her away. They shook. She avoided eye contact. The queen had lost her board. As she walked past me, she whispered, "You think you won?" I opened my eyes and met her gaze. I think I remembered who I was. She stopped, just for a second. Then she turned and left. Daniel stayed seated, staring at the floor. The room slowly returned to conversation, but the energy had changed. People spoke more thoughtfully, more carefully. Truth has that effect. It rearranges respect. I stood up, not rushed, not dramatic, and walked toward the exit. Every step felt grounded. Each one reminded me that dignity is not given. It is claimed. Outside, the air was cool against my skin. The city sounds felt distant. I inhaled deeply and let the moment seal itself into memory. I was no longer invisible. I was no longer waiting. And I was no longer silent. When I got home that night, I did not turn on the lights right away. I stood in the quiet of my hallway and let the stillness settle around me. No ringing in my ears, no racing heart, just calm. The kind of calm that only comes when you finally stop negotiating with your own worth. I placed my keys on the table, slowly, deliberately, as if I were closing a chapter that had been left open for too long. People think karma is loud. They imagine explosions, public collapses, dramatic apologies. But real karma is quieter. 'Tis balance being restored. 'Tis power returning to the hands that built it. Ava lost control not because I attacked her, but because she revealed herself when she realized she could no longer command mine. I did not feel hatred toward her. I felt clarity. And clarity is far more permanent. I thought about Daniel, about the little boy who once ran into my arms after every scraped knee, about how easily love can turn into expectation and expectation into entitlement when boundaries disappear. I did not absolve him. I did not excuse him. I simply accepted that love without structure creates confusion, not loyalty. If he wanted a place in my life now, it would be earned with respect, not assumed by blood. That realization hurt, but it also freed me. I made tea and sat by the window, watching the street lights flicker on. Life continued unchanged and yet completely different. I had not destroyed anything. I had corrected an imbalance. And in doing so, I had created space for something honest to grow. I stopped seeing myself as the woman who had been excluded from a wedding. I became the woman who chose herself when it mattered most. There is a strange power in not chasing closure, in not demanding apologies, in not waiting for remorse. The moment you stop asking to be understood, you start living in authority. That is the part no one warns you about. Silence stops being lonely when it becomes intentional. I did not forgive Ava. Forgiveness is not required for growth. Respect is. Distance is. Boundaries are. Some people are lessons, not chapters, meant to be reread. I did not forgive Daniel either. I allowed space for accountability. That is different. Forgiveness releases others. Accountability protects you. The house felt different that night. Lighter, like it remembered who had built it. I walked through each room and felt grounded in my own history, not defined by someone else's version of me. I understood something essential. Revenge is not about humiliation. It is about reclamation, about standing in your own truth so firmly that no one can rewrite it. I did not need their approval. I did not need their regret. I needed my voice back, and I had it. Some people will hear this story and think it was harsh. Others will feel seen for the first time. That is how truth works. It comforts the honest and unsettles the entitled. I slept deeply that night, without rehearsing conversations, without replaying scenes, without bargaining with myself. Peace arrived when I stopped asking for permission to exist with dignity. If there is one lesson in all of this, it is simple and heavy at the same time. Do not wait for disrespect to become unbearable before you respond. Boundaries are not punishments. They are declarations of self-worth. I did not walk away angry. I walked forward awake. And I never looked back. If this story made you feel stronger, seen, or understood, tap that like button and let your voice be heard. Share in the comments the moment you chose yourself and reclaimed your power. And subscribe for more stories where dignity rises and silence turns into strength.